I think we can all agree that 2023 was an amazing year for video games, and a huge improvement over 2022. But sadly, a horrible year for the gaming industry with leaks and too many hardworking people losing their jobs. Thanks to them, there were so many great games I enjoyed right from the start of the year. This year, things are different. Instead of doing something like the 10 best and 10 worst games like last year, this is a mashup of my favorite games of the year in no particular order. Surprisingly, I had very few games I thought were bad or disappointing. Plus, I had way too many games I enjoyed and didn't want to limit myself. So these are my favorite games of the year, but let me know your top games of 2023 in the comments below. With that said, let's get this started. One of this year's biggest surprises for me was Fantavision 22X. I got into the original game when it was re-released onto the PlayStation 4 and fell in love with it. It was different, innovative, and completely unique. So then to have this unexpected sequel of a PS2 launch game come out 23 years later just blows my mind. Fantavision 22X is easy to pick up and fun to master. The soundtrack is on point and one of my favorites to listen to. With an upgrade in graphics, the explosion of fireworks has never looked better. The reflections of fireworks against the water or on satellites is simply beautiful. The game starts off slow, eases into the gameplay, but later becomes faster and more difficult. Changing players becomes frantic, my eyes locking onto the screen, never getting the chance to blink. Only getting the freedom to at the end of every level. Fantavision 22X takes me back to a simple time. We don't see too many puzzle games today, and Fantavision certainly is a unique one. My only issue is the lack of other modes besides difficulty. Even the original had multiplayer. Maybe the $20 price tag is a bit much, but Fantavision 22X is worth checking out. Humanity is one of the best games of the year. It's unique and original. You play as a dog guiding humans into the light. What starts out easy gets more difficult and challenging the further the game goes. There are new obstacles to go through and around, new ways to guide the humans into the light, and if the main campaign isn't enough, you can create and test your own levels to share online. I can spend hours in this game. There's a lot to do. It's refreshing to play, and like Fantavision 22X, it's nice to see more puzzle-like games. This year, Sony launched the expensive PlayStation VR 2, and it's a vast improvement over the original. It's now so easy and quick to set up and play, meaning I've already played the PSVR 2 more than the PSVR. One of the only games I've really played is Horizon Call of the Mountain. It takes elements of what you would normally see in a Horizon game, but because it's a first-person VR game, it simplifies the experience with a focus on the environment. Climbing never gets boring and feels exhilarating. I really did feel like I was climbing, deciding where to grab next, one hand over the other in my attempt to scale the cliffside, or pulling my climbing axe out just in time to latch onto the wall. There's a huge adrenaline rush to it all. Machines feel massive in first person. There's a scope and scale we can never feel in third person. And combat turns into the semi-unreal segment that helps to keep the action on track while giving you controlled freedom to move around. If there's one PSVR 2 game to play, it's Horizon Call of the Mountain. Anytime a new Tomb Raider game comes out, I have to play it. And finally, the Lara Croft collection came out after being announced years prior. These games take a ton of what makes Tomb Raider what it is, but spins it off into a new format. It's experimental, but familiar with the combat, the puzzles, and exploration. Because it's an arcade-like experience from a top-down perspective, it can do environments and puzzles Tomb Raider could never do. But what makes these games stand out is its co-op features. There's a different experience to be had playing by yourself or playing with others, and there is a ton to do in the game. Find collectibles, weapons, upgrades to make Lara and her allies stronger. Each level has challenges to complete, and in doing so will help to unlock outfits and more relics for upgrades. The Lara Croft collection is new for the Switch, but contains the previously released games of Guardian of Light and Temple of Osiris. Personally, I love Guardian of Light the best. It has the vibes of Tomb Raider Underworld. I would recommend playing the games in order since Temple of Osiris introduces so many new features, like an open world hub and 4-player co-op instead of 2. The Lara Croft series was so enjoyable to play, and it's a shame we haven't seen more of it. But with this collection on the Switch, it's the perfect fit for it. It's fun playing it on the go, and is always a great time playing with others. Chances are you've heard Forspoken be one of the worst games of the year. and I can see where some criticism is, but I also find it overblown. I like the game because of its ambition and potential. It's not a perfect game, the story isn't the best, it takes far too long for it to pick up, the open world can be bland at times, and phrase characterization could be better. I can see the idea the developers had, the potential to be great, but it never reaches that point. Once the world opens up and you're able to explore, the real fun begins. Exploring the lands of Athia is one giant playground to experiment with. Dashing through fields, zipping to higher ground, switching to vastly different powers on the fly, Forspoken is the ultimate superhero game, and Frey has a ton of power she can use, almost to the point where it's overwhelming. Unless you're going for that platinum trophy, you probably won't be using all of them. Sadly, we'll never get a sequel. The DLC hints at where the game goes next, and now it's just a giant cliffhanger. Forspoken is a flawed game, but if you're willing to look, there are great moments underneath the flaws. I'm honestly shocked we haven't had a major game like Hogwarts Legacy before 2023. Create your character, choose your house, and explore Hogwarts and beyond. Sure, there's a story to follow, but the real magic is going against mission goals and exploring the world itself. Finding secrets, solving puzzles, testing out spells, defeating enemies, and flying on your broom. Just absorbing every small detail the developers put into the game. This is one open world game I never found myself getting tired of. Hogwarts feels massive to explore. The surrounding towns and the countryside are just full of character and charm. Everything feels lived in and active. Even without the addition of Quidditch, this game has so much to do with little to no restrictions, and is all the better for it. There are bugs to be found, but when there's this much fun, it's so easy to look past. As someone who grew up on the Harry Potter games by EA, Hogwarts Legacy filled a gap I didn't know I was missing for a very long time. It's hard to imagine Square Enix going a year without releasing some kind of Final Fantasy game. And this year we received the big one, Final Fantasy XVI. But this isn't like any Final Fantasy before, and it isn't just because of its focus on action. This is a mature Final Fantasy. We're talking blood and violence, cussing, sexual scenes, and nudity. It's shocking, surprising, and I welcome this taken risk. Often I find the stories of Final Fantasy difficult to get into. Bits and pieces are confusing to follow, but with 16, from start to finish, it was easier, and I enjoyed every bit of it. It's not perfect, it starts out strong and intriguing, but fizzles out the longer it goes on, and some characters deserve more attention. But the whole experience is emotional and breathtaking. The boss battles themselves will leave a permanent impression in your mind. They are that incredible. Some even take almost an hour to beat. Clive is a great character, and like any Final Fantasy game, the rest of the cast are very likable, though I wish you could do more with them. I enjoyed the more linear style the game had. It's light on RPG elements, which makes it easier to go in without having to strategize as much. If you've ever wanted to get into the series, Final Fantasy XVI is one of the more welcoming games to do so. Like Forspoken, personally I find the game worth at least one playthrough of doing everything. Unless you truly enjoy the game or want all the trophies the game has, there's little to bring you back outside of the DLC. And the second time I play through the story, it just wears you down. But that very first playthrough, Final Fantasy XVI is an unforgettable and sometimes emotional experience from start to finish. When it comes to the Dead Space remake, I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about it, but it shouldn't be overlooked. I was very apprehensive about EA wanting to remake the original. By gaming standards, it is an old game, but it's one that still plays very well today, so I always leaned into more of a remaster than a remake. The Dead Space remake completely surprised me. While it falls more in line with the original than a reimagining, there is more here than a complete graphics overhaul to pull classic players back in. Isaac now has a voice, side missions allow for further exploration, character deaths have more meaning, and Isaac's girlfriend Nicole has bigger purpose in the narrative. It's the Dead Space experience we all know and love, with improved changes and new additions that are very welcome for someone who played the original. The experience is familiar but also fresh, and I am so happy to see the series return. I hope it's a sign for more Dead Space in the future. This is what the Callisto Protocol wanted to be, but couldn't. Resident Evil 4 was a revolutionary game when it came out. It changed and influenced so many games. What's nice about the remake is that it doesn't replace the original, but rather complements it. Even calling it a remake feels wrong because it's more of a reimagining. There's that familiar nostalgic feeling, but everything is new. So when a scene is changed or omitted, it feels weird, but also exciting. Who knows what else could be different going forward? What I like about the remake is that it honors the over-the-top action and goofiness the original had. Leon does his quips, and seeing him flipping around and knocking down enemies never gets old. Because it's a reimagining, a lot of the areas have been expanded on and there's a lot more to do on the side. Characters like Ashley and Luis are vastly improved and probably the best changes about the game. Both serve a greater purpose in the story. Ashley is a more likable character and not annoying as she was before. The game is great, it's a nice blend of survival, horror, and action. Capcom really outdid themselves on this. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 builds and improves upon everything introduced in the first. While it plays similar to the original, there's enough polish and new additions to get excited for. The addition of boroughs outside of New York City feel fresh and original in comparison to previous Spider-Man games. Peter and Miles each have their own playstyle and stories, their personal lives intersected with their lives of being Spider-Man, how living a double life affects each person, missed opportunities, and fractured relationships. And this results in some nice twists and shocking moments that kept pushing me further to want to know what happens next. Though the story starts to falter toward the end, it's still an enjoyable ride from start to finish. Story aside, the city is the star of the show. Every bit of it is alive. It's a city that feels lived in. It's realistic but not empty. Everywhere you look there is some kind of detail to get excited for. Even with fast travel, it's still so much fun to web swing. It feels fluid and organic, and the new web wings are a nice alternative. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 isn't revolutionary by any means, but it doesn't have to be. It's a good time with great fluid gameplay and a city I never want to leave. It's going to be hard for a future game to top this, but I'm looking forward to seeing where Insomniac takes Spider-Man in the future. If I had to pick my ultimate top game of the year, Street Fighter VI is that game. This is what happens when you evolve a series for the better. I am nowhere near the best at fighting games, but I kept coming back to Street Fighter VI. It's very welcoming to new players. The art style is fun and super inviting, there's a nice blend of classic characters mixed with a new generation, and everyone magically blends in well together. Capcom had passion in making this and it shows in the final product. I love that Capcom has updated the classic characters. Change is healthy, and for me the characters have more appeal. Everyone has moved on from past events, they've evolved, but they still remain similar to how we know them. The best part of the game is World Tour, Street Fighter's version of a single player mode. This mode will keep you occupied for so many hours. There is so much to discover and uncover. The further you go, you unlock more areas and travel the world. The cast of Street Fighter VI become your masters and you learn from them. There's a whole story to get through, a ton of side missions and minigames to play. But the monetization is annoying. Because Capcom has implemented live service elements, this is a game that wants to bleed you dry, but wants to have fun doing it. It's easy to overlook all of it and stick to the World Tour and arcade modes, which is where I think Street Fighter VI is the strongest. With that, those are my top games of the year, and here's to seeing what 2024 has to offer. Let me know your favorite games of the year in the comments below. Check out my year in review video on PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. Be sure to like and subscribe for future content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.